Fated Glory, a short story. The once unbreakable alliance between Commander Carlos and Victor Sharp was shattered beyond repair. Their brotherhood, built on shared battles and a common cause, had become a tragic memory. Now the Christian rebel, Commander Carlos, found himself facing a man he once called friend, in a world torn apart by shadows of betrayal and rising powers. Victor Sharp, now a transhuman super soldier, had abandoned all the ideals they once fought for. He had thrown his allegiance to a new global power, the Architect, an enigmatic leader with whispered names like the Lawless One and Man of Sin. Under the Architect's dark and twisted doctrine, a new world was rising, and Victor had chosen his side. But Carlos hadn't forgotten the old days. He still carried the weight of a deeper loyalty, not just to his faith, but also to Raven, once his closest companion, and the woman he loved. But Raven's heart had always been torn, caught between Carlos's unwavering conviction and Victor's strategic brilliance. It was impossible to know where her loyalties truly lay, and that haunted Carlos every day on the battlefield. By his side, always dependable, was Bowman, a grizzled soldier who had stood with Carlos through countless struggles. Bowman had little faith in love or loyalty, but everything in survival. He could sense the coming storm with Victor and the Architect, and knew their time was running short. "Carlos!" Bowman rasped as they stood on the war-torn ridge overlooking the enemy's encampment. "You think she'll come? Raven's been with Victor too long. You think she's still one of us?" Carlos stared into the distance, his brow furrowed with doubt. "I don't know, Bowman. I don't know if I ever knew." The ground trembled beneath them, the unmistakable hum of the enemy's transhuman forces approaching. Victor Sharp's forces were relentless, precise, and as cold as the man who led them. Carlos had once admired Victor's brilliance on the battlefield, but now he saw it as ruthless efficiency. The efficiency of a man willing to do anything for power. And behind it all, pulling the strings, was the Architect. The Architect's rise had been swift, his influence insidious, spreading across governments, military powers, and economies. He promised unity and peace, but delivered only control and subjugation. Carlos tightened his grip on his rifle. He had made his choice, and it was a choice to resist, even if it meant facing down the people he once loved. He looked at Bowman. "We fight until the end." The skies darkened as the first wave of enemy forces emerged. But it wasn't Victor who led them. It was Raven. Her face, once full of warmth, was now cold and unreadable. She stopped a few paces away, her weapon at the ready, but her gaze locked on Carlos. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. "Raven," Carlos began, his voice softer than the steel resolve he usually carried. "You don't have to do this." She looked at him with a conflicted expression, but then her face hardened. "I made my choice long ago, Carlos, and so did you." Bowman muttered under his breath. "Looks like she's made up her mind, Commander." Carlos's heart sank, but he couldn't afford to waver. "Then we do what we must," he said, his voice now cold and resolute. "For God, for truth, and for everything that still matters." As the battle raged around them, Carlos knew this was only the beginning. The real enemy was not Victor or Raven. It was the dark philosophy of the Architect, a force they would have to confront before the world fell into irreversible darkness. And so, with betrayal behind him and uncertain battles ahead, Commander Carlos marched into the war, not just for his people, but for the very soul of humanity itself.